he heard a beep from the cockpit console, and the pilot turned to the troops behind him.
"There it is,"
he barked, his voice harsh and grating through his comms.
"Kestra's Southern Early Warning System, get ready."
Lieutenant Brax nodded to his team, and as one, they pressed a button on the sides of their helmets. Their visors tinted as each of their HU displays flickered to life. Only now were they allowed to see the details of the mission. Information scrolled before them. Analysis of the terrain, the nature of the target, odds of success. The lieutenant felt his team tense as they read, but he had faith their training would see them through. The white strip lighting above them flicked to red in readiness of the mission. A cacophony of alarms and indicators bleeped from the pilot's console. The craft's wings extended as it reduced speed, and with a hiss, it began its descent. Crossing over an enormous crystalline boulder, the troop carrier came to rest near a muddy pool on the island. Almost immediately, it was silent. For a moment it sat, exuding a brooding menace. Above it, the sky was turning a lustrous vermilion as the sun set. Kestra's 5 moons hung low on the horizon. Then, with a hum, the deplaning ramps began to slide from the vehicle's hull. After a pause, Lieutenant Brax led his raiders onto the planet's surface, waving them on to shelter behind a crystalline escarpment. As he peered through his visor, his HUD displayed the names and vital signs of each of his troops in turn. Otherwise, in their tight black fatigues, they would be completely indistinguishable. They held their heat exchanger guns at shoulder height in readiness. Light grenades were fixed to their utility belts. As he joined them in readiness, Brax pressed his back against the rock and cast a glance at the scene before him. Beyond the troop carrier, he could see the silhouette of the electronic surveillance station. Their target was in sight. His HUD picked out some of the local flora and labeled it Aquaflora linguista. The details scrolled before him. Swamp plant, height 4 feet, foliage, bright yellow and exotic multicolored flowers. Brax waved his hand impatiently, and the information disappeared. Raising a fist to be sure he had everyone's attention, Lieutenant Brax indicated that the troopers should move forwards towards a shallow fissure in the rock. He knew from his briefing that it led around the craft to emerge only meters from the target. The squad nodded in understanding and moved off. Brax noticed Smits brush against one of the strange flowers, and suddenly his HUD flashed red. Danger. As Smits reached out to push the plant away, its petals contracted as if in pain. The leaves on its stem began to spasm as the troops looked on. Suddenly, from somewhere deep within the flower head, there came a scream. It was a loud, piercing screech of distress that rose into the air about them. Panicked, the troopers threw themselves to the ground. They couldn't risk being discovered this close to their target. As they looked to their lieutenant for instructions, the scream subsided to a series of childlike sobs. After a moment more, the flower seemed to relax. Its petals opened, and its stem straightened. The pain had clearly passed. Brax shook his head. If he got through this, he would be sure to update the mysterious plant's entry in his databanks. The lieutenant nodded to his team, and they rose from the ground as one. At a signal, they continued their progress through the fissure, being extra careful to avoid the clumps of strange foliage. Skirting around their craft, the squad emerged onto a swampy plain. Wisps of vapor drifted aimlessly above the slick of black water. Clumps of purple rushes rose from the surface. On the firmer ground that rose here and there, Brax's HUD indicated more of the strange, screaming plants. Knowing it was the quickest way to the target, the lieutenant took a breath, held his HE gun above his head, and led his team into the swamp. The water rose above their knees as they waded carefully between the plants with barely a sound. As they neared an area of solid ground beyond the swamp, the small battalion could see their way was blocked. A bank of Aquaflora linguista rose before them, seemingly impenetrable. Troopers Carroll and Boone took it upon themselves to investigate further. As the light faded around them, they waded along the rampart of plants, looking for a way through. Finally, they were rewarded with the sight of a deep gully leading between two banks of flora. They waved to their squad. Brax nodded and motioned to his team that they should follow. Keeping low in the water, they each took their turn to navigate the gully, being careful not to touch the plants on either side. To brush against one might panic those around it too. Brax breathed deep. There must be hundreds of the things, enough to cause quite a commotion.